Well, welcome back to another episode of VR History. Today I broke into a seaside house in New Zealand to take a couple look at these fascinating paintings that I saw on a real estate listing website. And I just had to see them for myself. And joining me over the phone is one of my colleagues, Dallin Orr, who's a professional painter, and I wanted to get some of his insights. So, Dallin, welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Uh, any preference? Which one would you like to discuss first?
Well, let's start with that one on the left, the skeletal-looking guy with hollow face.
Yeah, this one's really something. So, a little bit of background on these paintings. The owner of this house is sort of a safe house for this woman who's laying down on the ground right there. Her name is Alma Reynard, and she is a privately hired assassin. Really sort of dangerous person, but I feel like that lifestyle is sort of reflected here in these paintings. One thing I wanted to ask you right off the bat, let's take a look at the technique. What do you have to say about like how this is painted and how that lends to the subject at hand?
Well, it appears to me that it was probably painted with transparent layering painting techniques, probably not painted with opaque kind of color blocking methods. So the transparent and glazing, more traditional method, I think is the technique that the artist probably used, and I think that really lends itself well to the subject matter being such a fantastical and archetypally demonic subject. It aligns itself well within the tradition of fantastical art.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I find really interesting is the sort of perspective going on, because like this is, if you look at this gaping hole in the head, at least we can assume that's a head. We have like what appears to be fingers coming out of it, but I can't tell like where those begin. If like that's the inside or the back part of the hand, or if the fingers are coming from the outside. And I don't know, it's just an interesting sort of play on perspective of seeing like what actually are we seeing. And like all of these sort of bony shapes, this figure is hard to say what size we're playing with here too.
Yeah, right. The scale, the hands in the foreground seem quite large compared to the head in the background, and it's also you're getting extra digits in the finger bones, and what are those metatarsals, metacarpals? I'm not sure what the digits would be called, but yeah, it's almost starting to become nonsensical and abstracted in such a way, but very still reminiscent of hands. So it's unsettling to see like how you still see hands, even though what you get is so abstracted in such an unsettling way.
Yeah, it does really make me uncomfortable. It almost make me nauseous to a point, but I'll take care of that later. Um, Going back to the fingers and the bones and stuff, when you were talking about that, I took a look at my own hand, and yeah, it's nothing like this. So I don't know if I can give a whole lot of credit in terms of like realism. I mean, I don't know what the artist was going for, but it clearly doesn't uh, depict real world anatomy at all. So I don't know. Well,
Well, I think that is a sign of the artist's skill and vision. This artwork seems very in line with the tradition of an artist like Beksinski or H.R. Giger, where the anatomy and the realism becomes so imaginative as to not necessarily resemble what you would see in reality. And I think that's part of what makes it so mysterious and visually impactful, is that it's got one foot in reality and another in fantasy, and it kind of blends those two things.
yeah, that's a really good point. Really makes you think differently about this. One thing I like too is the color palette going on. It's very almost hot. You have the yellows, the amber tones. It's not like red hot, but it's like I imagine this is what the surface of Venus would look like. I mean, maybe this is like
Ooh,
a sort of Venetian alien monster. I don't know how the artist would be able to capture that, but yeah, that's kind of a fun idea, maybe a theory. And like the shoulders,
yeah,
if we want to continue with the sort of anatomy look, that sort of background, the horizon, those could be shoulders, but that could also be an actual landscape. And maybe this is like the edge of like a cliff face or something. But it is a fun
right,
sort of exploration of those abstract themes that you brought up earlier.
right. Yeah, kind of blending human forms with the natural forms. It refers back to what you said earlier about that sense of scale, right? Like you don't know how big this sort of being, or if you can call it that, this body or corpsey thing is, because it's got so much atmosphere and sort of a shapes that resemble landscape that it's almost monolithic.
Yeah, it really is. Um, moving on, just putting it simply, how does this painting make you feel?
It makes me feel solemn and quietly reflective, maybe a sense of dread. Um,
Sort of like a dread, but
yeah,
also like a reverence. Yeah, I sort of get that.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Huh. All right, moving on to the next one. This one's a lot of fun. I've been pondering on this one while I was waiting for you to pick up the phone. And it's just really, I don't know. Let's begin the way we did last time with technique. Initially, I think of the pointillism movement just because we have the painting created with just a countless number of dots, just all these circles scattered all around, but they blend together to make the form of whatever the heck this form is. It almost looks like a head with a mouth and then more mouths for eyes, but I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, and yeah, interesting that you bring up a pointillism reference. I'm not sure that's part of what the artist's intent was. I mean, sorry, part of what the artist methodology was in creating the image. But I do think that that's a relevant insight, because the effect it's kind of having is it's almost like the image is being rendered in front of your eyes, and that definitely relates to a lot of what pointillism was doing, 100 years ago. Um,
Yeah.
so it's almost like you can see this ghoulish kind of form, almost taking shape and taking form, because you can see the way that the color and the texture is overlaying on top of each other, and it's like it's emerging from the ether.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up color. We have a similar sort of color palette going on here too, where it's pretty warm, but we also get some more cooler shades. We've got like the darker blue, almost like a gray blue going up at the top, maybe to resemble some sort of liquid or maybe some sort of atmospheric overlay effect. And then down there in the corner too, can barely see it with the lighting in this room, but we just have a lot of darks, a lot of yellows, and even some reds and oranges going on. But how would you think, or how would you interpret the color in relation to the subject of this painting?
I actually think the color is quite subtle and muted for the subject matter, which actually helps kind of ground the piece and it keeps the viewer sort of stable. I think if the colors were too garish and loud, combined with such a loud, energetically loud subject matter, it might be too much for the viewer. So to kind of subdue the colors, the nice warm and cool balance, like you mentioned, the blues and the warms, that creates a nice completeness to the image.
Yeah.
Um, but overall, the colors are neutral enough as to not overpower the dynamic contrast and shapes within the subject.
hmm Now, as I said, I was doing some research while waiting on these paintings, and they are by, well, for our intent, artist unknown. I have no idea who painted these, where they came from. They don't even have a name. So if you could name this painting, what comes to mind?
Well, this painting, very much my first reaction to this as a fan of the Sandman comic books growing up. There's a character with mouth eyes called the Corinthian. So the Corinthian might be a pertinent title for the painting if you are a fan of pop culture references, but I don't know. What would it's for a painting that is more, or for a title that's more abstract. I don't know. I'm kind of coming up a little empty. What would you title it?
You know, I've been looking at this lower mouth, and it looks oddly familiar. And many of you watching
Oh,
may consider this to resemble that of the mouth of Sauron from Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King movie. That's only seen in
indeed.
the extended version of the movie. But when the army approaches the Black Gate of Mordor, the mouth of Sauron comes out, you know, the mouthpiece, and he gives them, trying to demoralizes them with bad news that Frodo failed and whatnot. And we see the face of the mouth of Sauron, and his face is covered with this hideous helmet, but then we see his mouth that looks a lot like this. Like, even that little scar right there is really similar. So I wonder if the art director of that movie, like the makeup artist, I wonder if they had any sort of influence to this painting, because it's sort of uncanny. I know that's quite a digression from your question, but I thought I would just bring
You're
this up.
absolutely right. No, I that is very reminiscent of the art design of Mouth of Sauron, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look at the length of the teeth. That's definitely Mouth of Sauron right there too. As for a name, I would probably do something to convey the sort of uncanny, uncomfortable horror that I feel from this. I might just call it like Spooky Mouth in Thirds or something pretentious like that.
Ooh,
You know.
Spooky Mouth in Thirds.
Yeah, because we've got the, oh, whoops, I just let off my gun there. But
I
we,
like the element of musicality to that title.
right, because there is sort of a rhythm going on here. The painting feels structured. It feels correct in a sort of abstract way like that.
Yeah,
I don't know what to say about this. This almost looks like, I don't know, maybe a pig. Like, that's the
it's not a
snout.
puma.
Maybe those are like the pig's ears. But it could also be like the frontal face of a funny looking dog. But that also doesn't really make sense. I don't know. Probably reading into that too deeply, but pretty
Let's see.
fascinating
What's
overall.
on the other side of the face? Is there anything that kind of, what is that?
That looks like, have you ever seen the movie? Well, it's an album initially, but Pink Floyd's The Wall. There was a movie adapted for the album, and in the movie, sort of the music video portion for the Pink Floyd global hit song "Another Brick in the Wall" Part Two. Are you familiar with the one?
I don't quite remember the film as much.
Okay. Well, regardless, in the movie, the song itself is about the children's perspective of the British education system in the 1950s, and instances of teachers being too strict and inflicting sort of physical punishment, and how the school system was more or less just churning out students to be thrown into sort of the industrial age that Britain was in at the time. Anyway, the movie depicts this sort of idea by slapping a mask that looks like this on all of the students. And so, therefore, they all look identical and just expressionless, as if they've been stripped of their personal identity and they've been manufactured for whatever the teachers or whatever the establishment would have them, whatever role they would have them fulfill. So, interesting that
Oh,
we see a sort
fascinating.
of mask resembling that idea alongside this painting. Interesting. I'm not sure what the artist's intent was, but that's just what I think of.
You know, the smaller face shape on the other side also kind of resembles a mask. I wonder if mask is a thematic thing that the artist might be
Oh, I see that now.
playing with a motif.
It looks like an abstracted plague mask, like that sort of conal shape in the front could be like the beak of the plague doctor mask. But yeah, I think
Indeed.
you might be onto something. Maybe this has something to do with the whole aesthetic of the mask, why we cover our identity or why we hide ourselves from public.
Ooh. Yeah, the face we wear in public, or the face we show on the inside. Who we are to ourselves, who we are
And it's
to the world.
interesting that these two paintings are in the same room because just across the bed, we have this painting that has no face. Rather, it has the hands that are tearing it away or pushing it out. So, in the larger context, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but we're in the bedroom of a global assassin who is a very, very dangerous person. And she has these works of art that are all about either hiding or concealing or just completely stripping your identity. Maybe this is a
Mm,
sort of cry for help or an admission of guilt that she subconsciously is offering up.
I think you might be onto something there.
Well, I think that's all we have to say on that. Any final thoughts before I let you go?
Um, Maybe just that. I really liked what you brought up at the end there. That the painting on the left seems to deal with this the shell of the figure. It's more the artifice on the outside, and the painting on the right kind of deals with the horror of what's underneath the mask.
Yeah.
So you get that kind of dichotomy there.
I
So it definitely points to a tension inside the heart of whoever this woman was.
I think the artist, maybe these paintings were commissioned by this assassin, but I'm sure the artist was inspired by the infamous black paintings of Francisco Goya, who really showed off some of his psyche by hiding those quite disturbing paintings from the world. But we have them here, and they do quite invoke those sort of feelings of dread, but also just perhaps there is a monster lurking deep within all of us, and all we need to do is just remove the mask to find out who exactly we really are. And
Right,
get rid
right.
of that guy before I leave. Anyway, yeah, I'll let you go, but that was a really interesting conversation. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
And to thank you to all those who tuned in, please like and subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below.